plight is mostly invisible. The slowly warming seawater, slowly rising up through our porous limestone islands, no longer able to support the slowly dying fish. By the time our plight is made visible for all to see, our luck will have run out. We simply want to live.
Good day, Bahamas, and welcome to another episode of Sustainable Shores. Today, we're going to be exploring an interesting topic. In November 2024, the Bahamas government launched a historic debt conversion project for marine conservation as part of the government's fiscal consolidation efforts and also ensuring that we engage in prudent fiscal management with a win-win for the environment. Today, to talk a bit more about the project and how this will have meaningful impact for the Bahamas, I have a power panel to discuss the initiative. I am pleased to welcome to the Sustainable Shores podcast, to my immediate left, Lakeisha Anderson-Roll, Executive Director of the Bahamas National Trust, Ms. Danielle Hannock, Acting Director of the Forestry Unit in the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, Ms. Karen Panton, Executive Director of the Bahamas Protected Areas Fund, and Dr. Lester Gittens, Acting Director of the Department of Marine Resources in the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources. Thank you, ladies, gentlemen, for joining us today, and let's dive right into it. So, for the Bahamian people, I'm going to jump to you, Ms. Panton. Can you kindly and briefly explain what is the Bahamas Debt Conversion Project for marine conservation, and why is it so important for the Bahamas?
Of course, I'll do my best. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here among such a distinguished group. So debt conversions are not new instruments. They're not new tools. They've been around from the 1980s. What's so exciting about this one, however, is how it's being used both for marine conservation and for climate resilience. Debt conversions occur when countries' debts are repurchased at a discount, and then that space in savings generated by the reduction in interest is used for multiple purposes. Conservation efforts, whether it's forest conservation or it's marine conservation, as in our case, or both as we are working. Why is it important? Because small island developing states like the Bahamas and other developing countries have a three-pronged problem. One is biodiversity loss, the other is climate resilience, and of course it's unsustainable debt. And we're seeing that these three are actually connected. Biodiversity loss and impacts climate resilience, or the impact of these storm events on our islands. And then, of course, our debt levels are very high because of how countries are being forced to manage loss and damage. This presents such a wonderful opportunity, and I want to say again on behalf of BPAF, my board, the management, how wonderful we think and how impressed we are that the government itself has embraced this tool for finding the funding that's needed. The gap is significant, and I'm sure that my colleagues will speak to this gap. I mean, hundreds of millions needed in order to respond to biodiversity loss and climate change. But what is exciting is what does it mean, and what's it going to do? We've never had such a conversion, such a tool in the Bahamas before. We have, for the first time now, looked beyond grants, looked beyond philanthropic giving, look beyond just the general loans, and we're looking to see how we can take advantage and use a tool that will not only cost us, fiscal relief, but also generate much needed funding for conservation. But it will mean some growing up, as I would like to call it. Some of the policy, the governance, the transparency that doesn't presently exist, or hadn't presently exist, or existed before November, we're developing. So we're developing in order to become a world-class conservation and finance center or space. And I'm excited about that. And we'll talk more about what those benefits are. But the very fact that we're moving in order to embrace these different types of innovative financing and showing the world that the Bahamas hasn't only been first in establishing, marine protected areas, but also we're working to also be a mover and shaker in climate financing. I'll leave that there for now.
Okay. I mean, that is really exciting, right? To think about you really hit the nail on the head. Indeed, the issues that we face as small island developing states is multi-pronged.
Yeah.
And so we need instruments that will also be multi-pronged in
Yes.
nature. And so all of you are project partners that will be involved in this initiative. And so I want to jump to Director Hannick. How do you see the project benefiting the work of the forestry unit?
That's a very excellent question, because at times persons are like, well, what is forestry doing here when you're talking about marine protected areas? And that's a valid question. We do have to factor in the terrestrial component when we're looking at marine protected areas. We just mentioned how we need a multi-pronged approach and a holistic approach. And with that in mind, that's where terrestrial components come in, because whatever you do on land impacts the sea and vice versa. And so with that, we are, yes, our mandate is dealing with the Bahamian forest, but that could be limiting for some persons, because they're like, why do trees have to be so important? And it's not just the trees, but it's actually the ecosystems associated with the trees itself. And so for mangroves, for example, these are guardians of the sea, as you will. They've been tasked with knowing that they're that transitionary area between our marine and our terrestrial. They are essential for marine life. So if we take away our mangroves and if we our block creeks, those actually impact the function and the operations of our marine spaces. And so this is why that's important. So how does this help the forestry unit, and why are we even at the table? So we're at the table to help this process so that you do have a holistic approach, because we can't just do one action in a silo. You actually have to have a comprehensive approach around government. So how we develop our land, what is surrounding those areas, how we actually manage our forests, all complement what we're trying to achieve in our marine protected areas. And so that's why we're partnering and we're having this collaborative approach with the co-management concept that with our marine protected areas.
Okay. Yes, indeed. That land-sea nexus is vital for us as island countries. And as the mangrove serve as guardians of the sea, we are serving as guardians for this environment that we've been blessed with. And so having this instrument, this project, is very important. And I think that, I'm hearing about the terrestrial protection. I want to hear a bit more about the marine protection as well. Dr. Gittens, how will the project benefit the work of the Department of Marine Resources?
Yes, good day, Bahamas. It's a pleasure to be here as well. I will answer that from a practical perspective. As it is now, there are 4 marine protected areas assigned to the Department of Marine Resources that can be expanded by dozens, possibly. The reality of it is that it takes significant resources for those to be managed. That's human resources as well as financial resources. And we expect through this project that both of those will be significantly addressed. And so that's the reality. If we're going to manage even one marine protected area, just think about the day-to-day things or month-to-month or year-to-year things that have to happen. You have to do habitat assessments. You have to engage the communities, you have to bring them on board, and that takes a lot of resources. But now if you expand this to throughout the Bahamas, it takes that much more resources. And part of the mandate of the Department of Marine Resources as well is that we manage these resources on behalf of the Bahamian people. And so we have to find a way to bring these persons on board. And so it's going to take a lot of resources to undertake the necessary consultations, to take management of marine protected areas to the next level for the Bahamian people in partnership with all of the groups on the stage.
And I say that the Department of Marine Resources, you have a mammoth task. Everybody does at this table with the amount of marine square footage we have to track and cover and protect. And so, indeed, human resources, financial resources, capacity is going to be important. And we know that this project won't be the silver bullet, but it will be a tool in the toolkit to assist us, right? Director Lakeisha Anderson-Roll, right? I know that the BNT has had a role in this space for quite some time.
Yes.
How do you see the project benefiting the Bahamas National Trust?
Thank you for that question, and again, it's great to be here amongst my colleagues. So the debt conversion projects seeks to enhance effective management of the country's marine protected area network, which perfectly aligns with the mission and vision of the Bahamas National Trust, being the national park service for the country. And currently we manage 33 national parks across the various islands, across 10 islands, 22 of which are considered marine protected areas. So we have a huge portfolio to manage, and we see the direct benefits from this project in terms of being able to support a substantial portion of marine parks over the next 15 years. And I want to just also add on to what Dr. Gittin said in terms of the benefits of this project, because we have to invest in the human resources. When we think about the concepts of managing in the marine space, we have to factor in marine enforcement, making sure that we're not just creating jobs, but we're also training and providing them with the skill sets and equipment that they need. We have to factor in the planners, the outreach officers, the education officers, who has to go into the schools, in the communities, to start to develop the management plans that would speak to how the areas will be managed. And one of the critical pieces that Dr. Gittins mentioned as a part of the process, not just collecting the data, but making sure the communities that will be impacted directly has a say in terms of the decision-making processes. So these quite align well, and we're really happy that there has been an opportunity for the government to provide substantial financial support towards the protected area network system of the Bahamas.
I think that you've really touched on some key points here. I heard that it's not just the jobs, it's training, equipment, education, the institutional arrangements, and how this fits overall into how the local communities will benefit. And so I actually want to pivot back to you as well in asking, how do you perceive local communities will be involved in implementing conservation initiatives under the project?
So local communities play an integral part in the managing of marine protected areas, and even in the conservation space as a part of this project. We see communities being directly involved in the development and implementation of management plans, being a voice representing their communities on how these particular areas will be managed, being a part of the data collection exercises in terms of building capacity and relationships amongst the various stakeholder groups. But there are also opportunities for formalized community groups, those that have or have the ability to look at having a protected area or national protected area support system. We're always looking for ways in which we can help with developing communities through co-management. And so opportunities that exist for having a nonprofit organization status amongst community groups also give them the ability and positions them to access grant funding coming in through the project as well. So outside of the funding that's going to be supporting the agencies responsible, community groups are also able to access funding to support initiatives on their respective islands. And so when we talk about building capacity, we're not just talking about building capacity amongst the agencies. We want to build capacities across the communities that has a direct benefit and impact on how we decide collectively to manage these spaces.
Okay. You hear that, Bahamas? The environment is we change, as we say, right? And this project is not going to just be focused on building capacity of the project partners, but also for you to be able to be a part of the project as a co-manager in accessing grants. And so let's talk about that a bit more, right? Karen, Ms. Panton,
Yes.
So we're hearing about these opportunities for people, for communities, for the partners. How long is this project actually expected to last so that people know what's the time scale for this happening?
And I want to expand a little bit, if I may, on what Director Lakeisha also mentioned. So the project officially spans 15 years, but the benefits of that, as we know, will continue, indefinitely. All of the capacity building, all of the community involvement, the governance, transparency, preference, our togetherness and working together. These will be a platform for us to continue indefinitely into the future. That said, There's also a component of the project that speaks to an endowment, which we hope that will be valued at about 20 million or so at the end of it, that will be used to continue providing grants. Now, BPAF itself is also looking not merely at providing grants, but also supporting the blue economy, all these benefits that Director mentioned, and working with coastal and nearshore ecosystems and so forth, so that communities also benefit, not just from co-management, but bringing their creative ideas and their talents to the fore, so that they're starting businesses and we're generating wealth for the people of the Bahamas. That's another component of this project that we're interested in seeing develop. BPAF is making that transition. We recently completed a paper that speaks to how we can move from just being a grants-making agency to being an organization that embraces blended finance. So you may have a small creative in Long Island or San Salvador or wherever it may be, who may want to do something in the mangroves or or the corals or something. We want to be there to help with the necessary funding, seed funding, for them to develop and continue on and generate wealth for generations to come. So I see the benefits accruing for many, many, many years.
Again, I'm hearing win, win, win for partners, for communities, and for the Bahamas. And so I think, understanding that the community is going to be involved, there's a time frame of about 15 years, but with the benefits to go beyond that.
Yes.
Dr. Gittens, how do you see the project supporting local communities, particularly fisher folk?
Well, in a very significant way. When we look at global sentiment concerning the involvement of communities and fisher folk, especially the UN Ocean Conference that is scheduled to take place in June of this year, these countries around the world have come together and they more or less see the benefit and making sure we collectively engage the individual communities and fisher folk and so forth. And so that is what this project will allow us to do right here in the Bahamas. At the end of the day, if we're concerned about food security and livelihoods, it is those folks that we have to really engage. We have to bring them on board in terms of the decision making and their experiences and their guidance. And so this project will insist that there's a mechanism that we use to engage the fisher folk and communities. And so not only engage them, as mentioned by Mrs. Anderson, is that, Anderson role, my apologies. We have to bring them into the fold in terms of the decision making and day-to-day management. So there's an opportunity for co-management where on the ground you'll have the communities, you might have law enforcement, you might have the Department of Marine Resources. It really depends on the capabilities in each individual community. So it allows the Bahamas to take resource management to the next level, involving all and sundry if they want to be involved. And that is really and truly what we should do, because the resources are managed for everyone throughout the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that these type of podcasts and opportunities to engage with the public is important, because we help to talk about the benefits. We also help to dispel myths, right? And so I want to ask this question to Director Hannick. Will the Bahamas still own its land and protected areas under this project?
That's a great question, and I know that it's easy for it to be misconceived or misconstrued, like, oh, they're taking our land or taking our things, our things, as we like to say. But in terms of that answer directly, the short answer is no. The short answer is the government will always own the land that is associated with the marine protected areas, even the ocean space that will be conserved or designated. It is ultimately will remain the ownership of the Bahamian government. And so with that, and that's a part of each of our jobs, is the fact that we empower the community to know that this is your resource. Yes, we're working with you to obtain this goal for a national level, but on top of a community level, an individual level, this is your land and your resource. And we're helping, what we're doing is to ensure that your conchs and your snappers and your groupers and your bonefish that you rely on, that you continue to have those for generations. And so the time frame, it's a 15-year project. We're cross-cutting generations. That is at least how many? At least 2 or 3 voting demographics that we'll capture. And why is that important? Because they need to then see the benefits in their community and then mark to say, we started this project when I was in grade 1 or when I was graduating high school, and I can see the benefit within my community, and I can now come back as a fisherman, as a bonefish guide, to know that there'll be resources and jobs and opportunities. That's that concept of that sustainable livelihood. So land is integral to that, and the land will, and that will be always the goal, that it will remain for the resource, valued for the Bahamian people.
So I can look back at this camera here and tell the Bahamian people, no, the land was not put up as collateral when we went about doing this project. The land, the marine protected areas will always remain the property of the people of the Bahamas. And so now that we get that off the table, right? Right?
Tense moment there.
Right? Ms. Panton, can you tell us a bit more about some of the project's key goals and how they will support sustainable management in the short and long term? And I think that I went to that question because I heard the multi-generational component from Director Hannock.
I feel like I'm getting all the hard questions. So I spoke earlier about obviously the macro benefits that accrue to the country, but there are other things that are obviously commitments under the project that we've all signed, and one of them that I think is key is just having an understanding of what our oceans can do and its ideal and optimal use. The technical name I think is the Marine Spatial Plan, and that's going to help with some of the competing needs that we see happening in the space, and help to designate areas as appropriate for fishing, for development, for whatever it may be. That's key, and that's important in our overall development. But there are other things, as I mentioned earlier. It's the capacity not just for the government, as Nakisha said, it's not just for NGOs, and those are important because we know the lack of finance has sort of crippled our efforts towards enforcement and management and so forth, and building in climate smart opportunities in these management plans. But there's capacity also at the BPAF level, the capacity at the community level, capacity in terms of our understanding of what is available for us to help support, again, the blue economy. I think it can't no longer be just conservation for the tree. I want to save the tree, I want to save the reef, but it's saving that for people. And it cannot be that we're still in this, I want to create a job. No, it has to be, I want to create wealth without damaging the environment. And I think this is going to be important in doing that. So building that capacity for people now to also think outside of the box. So no longer are we going to be, okay, I want to be a maid at a hotel, and I am not disputing that that's a good thing. I'm saying, why not own the hotel? You know, why not think bigger? And I think this is partnering with organizations like Org Bahamas and with the rest of my colleagues here. We're going to be opening up some of those avenues, bringing in the people in the space so we can tell Bahamians, here are these opportunities. We want to have those persons who are interested register. It's important to register with the nonprofit, the Registrar General under the Nonprofits Act. And then after a year of being, having been registered, then come to BPAF. And let's figure out, we're also working with other local organizations. I guess I'm free to call one name, Bahamas Development Bank, and how we could together create this wealth and this benefit. So the capacity, and I won't take away from my colleagues what that would mean in each of the different organizations. They know what it is, I'll let them speak to that. But that's going to be key. The research is going to be key. We talk about a lack of data, and this project certainly will help to provide that. So I'll stop there and let them jump in.
Sure.
Yes, but if I may, I would like to say, how we talk about jobs, and everybody wants jobs. And I remember we were having a town meeting in Andros one time, and they're like, y'all protecting these mangroves, we can't eat them.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, you can't eat them, but you need mangroves to eat. You need that for your fisheries and for the same, and I think these were bonefish guides.
Yes.
And at the time we were trying to negotiate this concept of having, instead of putting in a marina, that would be right in the mangrove area. The fact is that this development did not suit the community, and that's what we were trying to explain. And they were just saying, well, no, I want, where are my daughters or sons going to work?
Yeah.
They're going to work at the hotel. And then the idea was saying, well, no, you can conserve your environment. and use another approach for employment instead.
No, I think that what you brought up was a very practical example, Director Harnick, and I think that perhaps why don't you continue on that same vein? You talked about going into the community, showing the importance of how conserving the environment can help to leading for economic benefit. So on top of the work that you're doing now, how do you see the training opportunities that will be a part of the project will help to strengthen capacity efforts in protecting terrestrial protected areas?
Definitely. Well, I will piggyback on what Executive Director Anderson Rose said, because we're empowering, not just training each of our agencies, but training the community. And so the importance, crucial part would be citizen science, is in encouraging the community to, okay, how, so they'll be like, what are y'all doing? Why do y'all have to count this tree? Why is that important? And so just to explain, okay, well, the height and the diameter of the tree, that actually indicates the health of this ecosystem. And then why is that important? Well, the functions that the ecosystem provides, we want to maximize that and maintain that. And so in increasing studies, not just with geographic information systems, so learning how to do mapping, learning how to do measurements, and in terms of sampling, learning how to do assessments and all the various types. So we have rapid assessments, ecological assessments, EIAs, environmental impact assessments. So learning all those different types, and in terms of how to do reporting and also just monitoring. So even going back and cycling, okay, water quality monitoring in our block creeks. What is the salinity level like? And why is that important? Well, that's the balance that would actually help with the fish, because they actually need a level, and if it's too much salt, then they can't survive. And so these are practical examples, and we see it all the time, and persons will complain, oh, the mangrove, they just stink and just smell bad all the time. Well, why is that? It's blocked. And so we actually need to improve functionality and have the infrastructure to complement the environment. So you actually need to put in culverts or maybe a bridge or help with drainage. And so this is where that implicates other agencies, because then you're bringing in Ministry of Works, you're bringing in the Department of Physical Planning, because then you're then saying, okay, this is a comprehensive approach. So it's not just, okay, training to go measure a tree or count birds, but at the same time, these concepts and principles, you're then showing and how they impact other areas and other departments. And so with the community science, because you'll have persons be like, yeah, I count birds all the time. But if we could capture that and help them learn how to put that into eBird, let's say, imagine the data that we could get, and we could say, okay, well, we don't have scientists who could go in and do a wildlife biologist who could be on full-time staff, but we could train persons in the community, and then we could have our own weather monitoring station, and we could have the data and collecting, and that's that part of ownership that they could then say, this is how our environment is performing, and we could see the benefit.
And if I may add,
Go ahead.
generate new businesses. I'm all about wealth creation, especially when I think of the Family Islands. Like that person could also be a guide. You know, but we can have all sorts of opportunities in our mangroves, honey and all the other wonderful things. But again, as we were saying, we need to make sure whatever we're doing is to generate wealth for Bahamians. Some of our Family Islands are struggling. What can we do? What will this bring? And I see countless opportunities. Once my colleagues get in there and they're on the ground and they're working with communities, there has to be this natural kind of rolling of the benefits.
Absolutely.
And we will all be working with these communities in order to help them, you know, with their creativity, bring it into a business plan, bring it into a business model again.
Writing the vision, making it plain,
Yes.
and implementing the plan, right? Dr. Gittens, like, how do you see some of the key marine conservation outcomes that would be expected by the end of this project?
I believe it will rewrite the narrative, so to speak, in that when we look at Sustainable Development Goal 14, Life Below Water, it starts conserve and sustainably use our oceans and seas and so forth. I think the country has to realize that conservation is not at odds with sustainable use. They're actually hand in hand, and that is what we have to bear in mind moving forward. A lot of times persons see conservation as an obstacle for whatever reason. Even the whole concept of marine protected areas. In the past, they were called no-take marine reserves. So that's a terrible name for it, because at the end of the day, those marine protected areas are actually being put more in the hands of the communities. They're just areas where there's special management. In some locations in protected areas, you'll have no fishing, but there's also room for subsistence fishing in some cases. There's more room for, I guess, community involvement and organization in terms of managing the activities that take place. For example, you might want to have ecotourism in marine protected areas. So at the end of the day, we have to consider a marine protected area as not only a place where you might have no fishing, it's an area where the communities can be directly involved in the management of the resources right off their shoreline, and that can take place throughout the Bahamas. So I think that is what I hope will change, to answer your question, and that is where I intend for the department and for the country to go if I have my way with how marine protected areas are managed.
Okay. Executive Director,
Yes, sir.
Keisha Anderson Rule. I've heard and I believe in the Bahamas where all of these things are going to happen. And I know with the partners who are here at this table, working together, we can make it happen. Transparently for the Bahamian people, though, do you believe that the $124 million allocated to this project will be sufficient to complete all the work?
Sufficient to complete the work. So 124 million spread over 15 years, which is just over 8 million annually, is a significant advancement in the finances to manage marine protected areas. However, if we are seeking to achieve fully staffed, well operationalized MPA networks or individual systems, and 124 million is not sufficient. You have to think about what management means. And we've already spoken a lot about collecting field data, so having science officers, marine enforcement, and being able to have skilled and equipped officers conducting patrols, fuel costs, the education staff going into the communities. We looked at that about 10 years ago under the Bahamas Protected Project. And what we found, the numbers were significantly high. We were talking about $100 million annually, not spread over 15 years. And so that was 2017. We've seen the inflation rates over the years. And right now where we are, we should be saying probably about 200 million annually. And so while this project will provide significant funding, we still need to make sure that our agencies, project funding, donors, and even thinking about revenue streams coming through these protected areas are in fact supporting the operational costs. A lot of donors, a lot of institutions, they are very much interested in supporting developing plans, some aspects of implementation, not so much salaries, not so much the major equipment and infrastructure that is actually needed. And so we need to figure out a way for us to increase the funding available for marine protected area management, marine conservation initiatives that will support the agencies and the communities. And so, while we are grateful for what has been achieved, we still have more work to do in that vein.
Could I add a little quick point?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think we need to have some sort of case develop about our experience with this debt conversion project, and then see how we can use the learning from that to continue embracing these types of innovative financing. I agree with Director. This is significant, especially as a single source, but it's only a beginning. And we mustn't sit down and, and say, we've done it. No, we've just started. We're just out the gate.
Yeah.
So we've got to finish running the race and make sure we bring the financing in. And that's how we will do it together. This is such a wonderful opportunity to bring private sector, NGOs, government together. Perhaps have not been like this before, where we are actually having to use international best practices to develop and manage a particular program. And I'd like to recommend that we use this learning so that we could show the world the Bahamas has always been a trailblazer. We want to start creating and maintaining that trailblazing sort of energy as we go after climate finance, because this country supplies so much resources to other countries, especially on the eastern U.S. seafront, along the Caribbean. We are, what we call it? The birthplace of, how does PNT say? The birthplace of many, many species right here in this nation. And we need to figure out a way, since it won't be given to us on a silver platter, we need to figure out a way how to think out of the box and generate those streams for ourselves and for generations to come.
Agreed. I think that most certainly what this is helping us is to set the investment case for the Bahamas. We've always been a trailblazer.
Yeah.
We continue to offer significant ecosystem-based services
Yes.
for our nation and for the region.
Yeah.
And by putting our, our skin in the game, all right, and conducting this work with such, amazing partners, I foresee that we certainly should be able to leverage this opportunity
Yes.
to get more financing to protect our environment and our people. So I'm going to throw out some questions as well. I have a question to give to all of you. How do you see the debt conversion project aligning with national priorities? Any of you could take it, or
I'll start. The Bahamas set a standard some years ago in meeting a commitment to achieve 20% protection of its natural and marine environments. And the agencies before you and other partners have helped the country to meet that goal. We may be short by a couple of percentage points, but we've done significant work within the organizations, but also within the communities. And in terms of this project is helping us now with implementing and supporting effective management. It's not about expanding the Marine Protected Area Network, it's about managing what we have. And so this project helps the Bahamas significantly to meet that national goal in terms of managing its marine resources effectively.
okay? Any other takers?
I mean, you said that so beautifully. But if I could add to it, managing our resources. We, my agency as well as with Department of Marine Resources, part of our acts actually mandate us to say that we are protecting the resources in our various capacities in perpetuity for the Bahamas, for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and its citizenry. And so with that in mind, this is a part of that solution. That's that three-pronged approach, that holistic concept, and instead of just being in a silo and doing what we want, but we're actually saying, no, this is a true sense of community, because we're public-private partnership. We are doing that, but just not individual goals, international goals, but national goals. And not just national to say that's assigned or aligned with an administration, but national in terms of all Bahamians. And so this is something that impacts everybody, regardless of their political beliefs. But as a national, I am a Bahamian, and I want to ensure that my grandchildren will have the same memory of being able to go to the sea and get a conch. If not, that is a part of who we are. And so for me, I would say that I would align, does this align with our national goals? Yes. And does this help us meet our mandates? Yes. It's a start in the right direction, and it's something that we need to then galvanize and build upon. And so this is just be a part of our everyday life and the way that we associate. It just wouldn't be like, oh, that's just for conservation. No, this is for me, for my children, and for the future of my country. So that is the point of what drives our work and what we do.
Beautifully said. Anybody else?
Well, if I might add, I'll approach it from a different perspective, and that one of the biggest risks for the non-success of this project is lack of engagement by the public. There's a genuine interest and effort that will be made to engage the communities. We need them to do their parts and respond to that invitation to be a part of the team. And that is really and truly what will be needed to take the country to the next level in terms of management of our natural resources. We need the community to be involved. Despite all the challenges that the Bahamas and the world is facing today, this project is a tremendous opportunity for us to work together to take the Bahamas to an even greater height.
If I perhaps could add, I think you've got national priorities right here in the room. National parks, forests, marine, finance. What's missing? Government. We're all here, and we all have a slice of national priorities in our own agenda. And as Doc said, stakeholder engagement. The government has engagement with all of the required, I think, quasi and ministries and departments to make this, to respond to those things that the government itself has already identified with the support of NGOs like the Bahamas National Trust and others to say what is it that is most important for the country. And this project is responding to that.
Okay. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to close. Again, will this project help or hinder a united effort towards conservation in the Bahamas?
I would say it definitely will help. We expect as a part of the consultation process there'll be diverse opinions and opposition, but at the end of the day, we expect that we'll be able to talk through these differences of opinions, and that is what is needed. I mean, even when we look at national security and crime and so forth, the country as a whole could benefit from being able to dialogue more, come to a reasoned, I guess, conclusion on many matters, and it's the same for resource management. And then it's actually needed as well. Once I, as a resource user, want to use it in a particular way, somebody else wants to use it in a different way, if we consider each other's differences of opinions and uses, we can come to a collective decision as to what's the best way forward. And that's what's needed at the end of the day.
And I would just add, in terms of having a united front, so it's not just the agencies before you that would be involved. We are creating national committees that will span across the various sectors and agencies, making sure that we are on a united front. Our agencies are working collaboratively because at the end of the day, we are responsible for our marine resources. And so we want to make sure that even at the local government level, working down into the communities, they are at the table and they are in the decision-making discussions because it is of utmost importance to all of us.
Okay.
I would say just complementing or enhancing that point or adding to that point, we're seeing at the community level with our local community councils, island administrators and such. You have that Bible verse that says it's a little faucet that spoils the vine. So it's not really a large project that can have implications, yes, but it's the small actions that can actually peck away at the progress of what we're doing. And this is why we need the community to get their engagement, and they're quite passionate. When they come out to town meetings, they will tell you. They will tell you that this is their CISO. I mean, in some communities, it's almost like you're coming there with donuts and you're trying to say like, hey, we're here, we're on the same page. And it's just getting them to see that. And so with that in mind, it's the fact that these little actions, day to day, month to month, year to year, they all add up. Because sometimes you'll be like, how did we get here? How did we get here? How did this happen? And it's always those micro actions. And so the idea is to change those to positive ones that would then complement all that we're doing.
Okay. You want to close?
I can't speak so much to community level actions, right? But I'm just really very happy to hear what my colleagues are doing. But the thing again that I would say is we've not had this type of everyone being in the room before. And I don't see how you can have this level of stakeholder engagement and not just sitting here. I mean, we have meetings constantly, regularly, workshops, phone calls, discussions, cuss-outs, all of that. And out of that, diverse discussions and interactions, surely we can come up with the best solutions for the country. We're talking to the Ministry of Finance. We're talking to the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources, Bahamas National Trust, the oldest and most prestigious environmental body in the Bahamas. Listen, this is going to be the turning point that I think that we need to bring everyone in. Governments always are looking, are we always asking the government to be willing to do it? I see willingness now, and I'm really, really excited to be in this space at this time.
So I guess for us to close, Bahamas, we hear those words in our national anthem about see how the world marks the manner of our bearing. You certainly set a bearing on a course towards conserving the environment for the Bahamian people. And it's going to require all of us around the table and you as well, so that we can move forward, upward, onwards together for the future of our country and the generations. And so this will not be the last you'll hear about us and the project partners, but this is the end of this episode of Sustainable Shores. Thank you so much for joining and have a great day.